So we are the Digital Dojo, and our exciting thing every day is finding ways to help you get unstuck because stuck sucks. So we are today talking about some of the things that happen, the fights that happen that just keep showing up that are keeping us the most stuck. Because when people are in it, when everything's up for everyone, that is the best chance to move something because there's some energy behind it. So stuck sucks. Things have been sucking this week and last week for a lot of people. Let's move
Some stuck stuff.
not a swear word.
Come on, you know you want to.
So today's topic is, along this vein, the fight you always have. So you might know what this is. You might not even have to think about it. Something just came up, a tone of voice, someone's face, that topic. It's not the worst fight, but it's the one that keeps showing up. I'm Colleen. This is Dana, who is apparently doing an astrology course today. And today we are going to go somewhere that a lot of people spend a lot of energy avoiding. What we know is that the fight you always have is not about what you think it's about. The dishes are not about the dishes. The money is not about the money. The thing your mother says every Christmas is not about Christmas. The content is the decoy. It is drawing attention to the thing underneath that doesn't have words for you yet. And as long as we keep fighting the surface thing, the thing underneath just waits. It has nowhere else to go. It is there to help you. So today we're talking about some of those common fights, but we are also talking about what that thing underneath actually is and what happens when you finally shift it. So, any thoughts?
Skeletons in the closet versus the bodies buried in the backyard.
Can I explain that one?
You can.
I don't know if we've talked about that one before.
It's such a great one, and it immediately came to mind.
So, this is my conundrum that I had a few years ago, which is that I always wondered why people would come in and they always had the same skeletons in the closet. And on the one hand, I was like, well, we've only got something to work on. Because every once in a while, people would show up for sessions and go, I don't have anything to work on. And I'd go, well, let's just open the closet door, shall we? We know what's there. But I also wondered, why do we keep having all those skeletons in the closet? What's going on? And I realized finally it was because we don't like the skeletons in the closet. They are gross, they are icky, they are frightening, but they are so much better and less terrifying than the bodies in the backyard. The skeletons in the closet scare us, the bodies in the backyard terrify us. Now, the beautiful thing is, when we finally admit that there's a body in the backyard and we finally go out and get brave enough, courageous enough to dig it up, generally speaking, it is not as bad as we think it is. Generally speaking, we start to dig it up and we go, oh, wait, yeah, I had this vague, hazy memory of going with my friends, breaking into our old high school. And then, like, I think we killed the science teacher and buried him in the backyard. The show's getting dark, I know. And then you start digging it up and you go, oh, we stole the skeleton hanging in the science room. That's what it was, right? It doesn't mean, I mean, it's not a great look. You still have to take it back. You still have to deal with the fact that you stole something for whatever reason. But it's not the same as, oh my God, we did this thing that there's no coming back from. So, bodies in the backyard is what the fights are all about. Brief aside, since we're talking all the random things, Chinese medicine, I've got some dry evil going on, which is fun to say, which also means
it's super dramatic.
It does sound dramatic. And that's me. I am dramatic and ominous. So occasionally I have a coughing fit and I will just, if you hear me coughing and wandering away, I'm not becoming a body in the backyard. I am just not coughing in your ears. And Dana will continue to talk. So let's talk about bodies.
Yeah, when I think about that idea and how it relates to, the fight that we kind of always have that we're tired of having but can't stop having with people or ourselves, is the old saying, which I love because it's so true, and that's why it's cliche: the devil you know versus the devil you don't. So the skeletons in the closet are the devil you know. They're the challenging things that you might feel guilt around, that you're not really wanting to show everybody, but by the same token, you're not afraid to occasionally look at them yourself and fundamentally allow them to become a wonderful distraction from looking at anything more serious or, dare I say, shameful. Those are the bodies in the backyard. So when we apply that idea to that saying, right? Sometimes we'd rather choose the devil that we know than the devil that we don't. It comes alive for me in that description of bodies in the backyard versus skeletons in the closet, because we don't want to know what the bodies are that are buried in the backyard, and we know we don't want to know what those bodies are buried in the backyard. So
Sorry, you meant skeletons first and then bodies?
yes,
Yeah. Okay.
sorry,
You
thank
had,
you.
you had two sets of bodies.
Yes, um, yeah, the skeletons in the closet are things that we know about. The bodies in the backyard are things that we absolutely do not want to know about, and that's where the skeletons become really useful and convenient and handy, because as troublesome as they might be, they keep us from digging any deeper.
Hmm. Okay. So, do we do an example question from one of the write-in people?
I believe we do.
Okay. Let's start with this one because we don't usually have as many guys writing in. We fight about whose turn it is to be struggling. I'm dealing with anxiety, she's dealing with burnout, and somehow we end up competing for who has it worse instead of actually helping each other. We love each other. I don't understand how we got here. So, on the surface, the fight is about who's struggling more. A lot of couples have this as well with I'm tired, you think you're tired. Right? I only got 6 hours sleep. Whoa. And we do this at work. We've it's such a safe thing to do. It's sort of like the humble brag, right? You get to work and they're like, somebody goes, I'm tired. Oh, I only got 4 hours sleep last night. I don't know how I'm here functioning, but watch me function. So I know what's going on usually underneath.
Mm.
Do you have any thoughts before I?
Mm.
For
I
this
can
first.
expand on this. Yeah, that first.
Okay. Um, I've been working with a lot of women who are perimenopausal, menopausal, postmenopausal lately. And honestly, I think it might be a good thing to do in the next couple of weeks is do an episode just on dealing with the emotional changes, because it's such a fabulous time as hormones are changing, as women are starting to get as much testosterone as men have, and the world is starting to adjust. I have so many women going, yeah, I just don't care anymore. Like, I'm just saying things, and if people don't like it, oops. There's even that woman on social media. I think she calls it the Do Not Care Club, and it's hilarious because she's like, yes, if you go into the bathroom at our house, there are bras hanging off the towel rack and the doorknob. We do not care that you don't like them there. That's where they live now. Yes, there is a fan going all the time because I am hot. We do not care that you think it's cold. You can put on a sweater. So there is this forward momentum there. But there's also this idea of all these women going, okay, what have I put up with for the last however many decades? I am not putting up with it anymore. And so there's this sense of vitriol. There's this sense of like, I'm going to take on everybody. And one of the things, no, that is useful. That is very useful because when we are not taking crap anymore, things change. And we want to aim the fight in the right direction. So, for instance, they have done multiple studies. The first one was done by a woman. A bunch of people have since done them and basically duplicated the results. And the studies all show that in the very first study, this woman was running a university class. At the end of the class, she would say, who talked more, men or women? Generally speaking, women thought that they talked about 14% more than men. Men thought that women talked between 35 and 85% more than men. In every single class, when they went back and analyzed the word count, men talked 50 to 90% more than women, but thought women were taking up too much airspace. This has been duplicated. This is not just she had an agenda and she was skewing this. This comes up again and again and again. So one of the places that we can use this usefully, because today it's all about usefully, which is, oh yeah, if I have something to say and I feel like it's useful, I'm allowed to say it. And all the rules that I internalized that said that I wasn't allowed to say it before, I don't have to listen to those anymore. I can change them. And on the flip side, we don't need to demolish everything in a 30-mile radius in order to accomplish that. So, for instance, one of the things that we do on here is I will read a question from somebody who's been listening. Generally speaking, I will ask Dana to talk first. Not because my brain is going, he's so much more important. He's a man. He should talk first. But because my little neurospicy brain needs a second to think of what was said and listen for and find the answer. If I talk first, you're going to be getting a lot of, I think, Dana's brain doesn't do that. So as we go, hey, here's the thing that I'm changing, we want to change it where it's useful and not change it where it's not useful to change it. That's my diatribe, and I'm sticking to it.
Go diatribe.
Go diatribe. So you want to answer this now? We fight about whose turn it is to be struggling.
Yeah, it's interesting how so many things, especially when it comes to conflict and anxiety and fear, come down to a fundamental level to the common denominator of shame. And I think struggle is a very interesting one that lands on opposite sides of the same shame coin for men and women generally, right? Or the masculine and feminine, to be more broad and certainly inclusive, because we've all got both energies. We've all got masculine energy, we've all got feminine energy.
That's why I like yin and yang.
Yeah, that's actually great. So the yin and yang of it. Men, and speaking as a man coming from that perspective in terms of how I identify, is pretty aware of the fact that I've been taught that we're not supposed to admit that we're struggling ever. And we have to kind of clamp down and shut down any kind of acknowledgement or communication of the idea that we're struggling with something. Right? And that's really bad in a whole bunch of ways. The other really tough flip side of that, quote unquote, shame coin, as far as it applies to struggle, is that, and being surrounded by two very intelligent women that I respect in Nicole and you, Colleen, I'm curious as to what your take is, if I'm on or off around this. But what I've been observing, and of the many women that I work with in my work, that women are almost saddled with the idea that if they're not struggling, it's unladylike. If they're not struggling, they're being too masculine, they're being too forceful, they're being too aggressive. And this idea that, women have to be struggling because that's their natural nature, because they are, of course, naturally weaker in all the important ways that make men not struggle at all with anything. It's almost unwomanly to struggle, or to not struggle. I mean, right? To be capable, to be competent, to be assertive, to have lots of capacity and skill on your own terms, to take care of yourself and things that are important.
It's been a long time since I've dated, but do guys really still think that? Like, really?
You know what's interesting though is I don't think that a lot of men, probably younger than our generation, really consciously think that anymore. But the overarching, and this is my perspective, the overarching programming of that is so deep in patriarchal influence that they still operate that way on some level, not necessarily overtly and intentionally, but in an unconscious and emotionally driven way a lot of times. So that's just from my observation, right?
And part of this is when you know me, it's going to be about inherited trauma at some point.
For sure.
I mean, we have all carried forward inherited trauma from way back when, where women were supposed to struggle and men were supposed to never struggle. Like, that's just passed down. Like,
yeah, and so then what happens
brown
is
eyes and blue eyes.
Sort of see, and like, work with lots of different age ranges. Some right in our age range, some a little bit younger, quite a bit younger, a lot younger. And the common denominator seems to be hinged on this. Men, I think as humans and women in general too, we're all evolving. So I think that impacts how we consciously think. But as pertains to this question, when we're triggered, particularly for men when they get emotional, when they're in their emotions and they're triggered by their emotions or triggered by the emotions of their partner or the important women in their lives, we kind of forget all that, you know, sensitive metrosexual, I'm a sensitive millennial man stuff, and we kind of resort back to, you know, the basic level of the most powerful programming that's occurred. So I see that sort of come out, and it's kind of where things get tangled in this way the question is asking about, right? It's like, well, now all of a sudden we can't be allies in struggle. We have to be adversaries in struggle and kind of keep count of who's struggling more, who's struggling when, how often they struggle as compared to how often the other one struggles. And it just starts becoming a kind of an adversarial tug of war, where I think if we can, and maybe that's just the way I'm languaging it, right? Like flip that shame coin and kind of reflect both sides of what it means to struggle and to be judged for that, or to not struggle and to be judged for that, then we can land in a place where we can work with what I call in my work shared experience. Because I think that brings us back to being not men, not women, not any other delineation other than just human. So if we can be open and be able to share what we're struggling with and recognize that it doesn't really matter what we're struggling with, it's the quality of the fact that we're actually struggling, then it all of a sudden becomes easier for me to accept in myself if I'm struggling with something. And if I can accept it in myself, it's much easier for me to empathize with Paul about what she might be struggling with. And then we're on the same side of the struggle. Not that that eradicates the struggle or makes it magically disappear, but instead of standing, face to face with the struggle in between us and the value judgment of, well, whose struggle is more important, we then just kind of get to stand shoulder to shoulder and look at the quality of struggle, like what struggle does when it feels like it's too much, how it makes us feel when it comes across as insurmountable. All of a sudden, we're in what I call shared experience. And if we can share that experience, get back to the fact that we're just both human beings, and as human beings, it's very natural to struggle. There's lots to contend with in the world and in our inner world. Then all of a sudden, we're not competing against each other anymore. We're allies, and we can inform each other's struggle by expressing our empathy in a reciprocal way.
So,
Feels very linked to, when women are struggling, since we're using that word today, it seemed like men are so programmed around, she must be telling me this because I must fix it, right?
Oh,
yeah,
oh my gosh.
And it seems so very tied in with that.
Very much so. That's
yeah.
really astute observation, Nicole, because that's kind of like a perfectly summed up expression of the linchpin to what I'm trying to enter into. Because, like, right away, that kind of reinforces the idea that, well, a woman's not capable of fixing her own problems. She's not capable of handling anything on her own. So, of course, she's struggling with that. And that's what I'm expecting. She's expecting me to give her as a solution to the things that she obviously has no capacity to handle, solve, and therefore is struggling with.
Yeah.
Yes. And on the flip side, though, like in this example, he said, I'm dealing with anxiety. She's dealing with burnout.
Mhm.
So many men want to be useful because they don't know how to just sit in the thing and have the feelings because they were taught they were not allowed to have feelings other than
Absolutely.
neutral and angry.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So the only thing they can do to be useful is fix it. And so then he offers to fix it. He doesn't fix it, quote unquote, correctly because she's still burned out. She's still needing help. She's still whatever she is. And so his anxiety is going to spike because he's not good enough now.
For sure.
Which also ties back into the original perspective you were sharing, Dana, about women being more emotional and seeing that as a weakness, really.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a full circle thing. It's all programming. It's
It
crap.
really is. It becomes a vicious, dwindling spiral, right?
Yeah.
That keeps feeding the same diminishment in a way that feels like it's literally like just gaining momentum and getting more and more and more out of control.
And the ironic part about that is, generally speaking, again, generalizations, men tend to be good at short-term bursts of big energy. But when you're talking about long-term strength, women have got it, man. Like women have more stamina than men do. Women can tend to be able to handle hard things, heavy things, hurtful things for a longer period of time than men can. Men are great at short bursts. So it depends on which one it is. There's this thing going around on social media, because it's the big joke where um, about women handling menstrual cramps. And it's a whole group. There's like 10 black men and they do their different perspectives on things. And so two of them sat in chairs with, I think, girlfriends behind them with the period cramp simulators on.
Somewhere
It's
because it's so good.
this the one with harmonicas?
Uh,
No, it was even better. It was even better. I just saw it the other night
oh,
because
I know.
they had the period cramp simulators on and they had harmonicas in their mouth.
Oh yeah, same one.
And so the women would turn it up from 1 to 2, and at 1 the guys were like, it's fine. At 2, they'd catch their breath and you'd hear woo from the harmonicas. And by the time they hit 3, it was just harmonicas wheezing constantly. And at 4 they just fell on the ground.
But there's a section too where the women are turning it up, but then in the one that I saw, which I don't know if it's just a longer version of this one because it's the same guys, then they gave the controls to the guys, to each other.
Mm.
And they were like doing all that, guttural noise making. And we're like, dude, why are you killing me? Why'd you turn it up to 10? And he's like, it's only at 1.5.
Right.
That's
And so
funny.
it was super interesting to start to see how they started to sympathize with each other, how the men started to sympathize with each other when, they were like definitely in very, very obvious physical discomfort.
Wow.
So again, men tend to have larger muscles, tend to have more bulk, tend to, generally speaking, be able to do stronger things more quickly than women, but women have more long-term strength, which is fascinating because we don't think about it that way.
Well,
So-
not just strength too, but a very particular kind of endurance.
Yeah, women definitely have endurance. And this is proven. Like this is not just this is our opinion. Like studies are proving this time and again. So part of where this ties into with the question where he says, I'm struggling with anxiety, she's dealing with burnout, is when we're talking about shared experience, he might not know what it's like to feel burnt out. She might not understand anxiety, but when we can say, hey, mine's an 8 out of 10, yours is an 8 out of 10. I don't know, for one reason or another, I was thinking about the other day, when I was working on my master's at school, I was a TA, and so TAs shared offices. One of the things that I got to deal with, which was super fun, was people assuming that because I was young, I didn't know what I was talking about. Now it's just because I'm a woman that some people assume I don't know what I'm talking about. But I was, to be fair, I was sitting on the floor outside of the office waiting for the person in there to be done their time slot. And some guy comes up and he sits on the floor next to me and he's like, hey, are you from blah, blah, blah's class? And I went, yeah, meaning to explain to him. He was like, oh, this section's really hard. This is the second time I'm taking this class. I'm here to see the TA so that they can let me off the hook for the paper. But I mean, honestly, so first of all, he's telling me all the ways he's going to try to get out of this paper. And second of all, he offers to explain to me what the book is about that we're studying. And I was like, really? Tell me more. I'm fascinated. So he proceeds to explain the book to me. Then the TA comes out and goes, hey, Colleen, office is all yours. The guy just looks at me and goes, yeah, did I tell you my name? And I said, you did. He goes, crap. I'm going to go home and write the paper now.
Good idea.
Now, Dana hasn't been treated as less intelligent than for being a woman. I have dealt with that many, many times.
Mm-hmm.
He has dealt with being treated as if he was less intelligent because he's a person of color.
Right.
Most definitely.
we will never know exactly what that's like for each other, but it's probably close enough.
It's so bizarre. So
Which
bizarre.
part?
Well, it's all bizarre, but yeah, you're absolutely right on.
Yeah, all of it. Yeah.
It
But
is.
just
It
like
is.
I said, I think I said this on one of your previous shows where, people create these horrible, hateful divides over someone being more beige. Like it's
Yeah.
just the stupidest reason
I know. It's just,
ever, right? Like,
yeah.
how evolved are we people?
Yeah. It's like the differences are climate based. That's it.
Right?
Right? But
I
it's
got a 10, you don't have a 10. I grew up with sun, you grew up with snow and ice. That's the only difference.
and it's the same thing as why are we creating all these divides about somebody having more estrogen or less
Yeah,
or more,
exactly.
right? It's bizarre. You're right.
That's a perfect example of where we get back into shared experience, right? Where it's like I can understand that perspective and that experience that you've had and you've had, Nicole. And because I can understand that, I can relate it to experience that I've had that feels similar to me. So it's not the quantitative aspect that's so important. It's not like, well, I've gone through exactly this specific thing in the physical, real 3D world, and you have not gone through that exact specific same thing in the physical 3D real world. But as we are unique individuals and human beings, we can kind of say that about everyone. No one's had the exact same experience as somebody else. We've all had our own perception of maybe similar experiences, but it's leaning into that space, the qualitative aspect of like, well, how did that experience make you feel? And when we start sharing those things, all of a sudden we're breaking that binary, we're breaking that opposition, we're breaking that potential for competition and adversarialness, and we're getting into like, hey, yeah, I know what that feels like, or I have an idea of what that might feel like for you, because here's how it feels for me, and all of a sudden we're sharing our struggle.
So where that comes back to with question, he said, I'm dealing with anxiety, she's dealing with burnout. If we assume their shared experience and that what the other person is feeling is their version of what we're feeling, then rather than our thing being a failing and their thing telling us where we're failing, we can go, oh, I know what this feels like for me. Can I help lift that for you? Can you help lift this for me? So he's dealing with anxiety, which tells him, I am not good enough because of X, Y, or Z. So when she is burned out, I am not good enough because I'm not doing enough around the house. She's making it clear. I'm not making enough money that she doesn't have to work. She's telling me that if she's tired, then obviously I'm not doing enough around here, right? I'm not good enough. She's dealing with burnout, which is I'm not good enough. I'm trying to fix everything for everybody. I'm trying to do all the things, and I'm not good enough. I can't handle it. Bet you my grandmother could have. Bet you are noticing because your mom would have cleaned the house and I'm not. Well, if we take that back to shared experience of I don't want to feel crappy and I don't want you to feel crappy, it becomes an easier conversation to have, which is at the very least starting from this is 100% about me. I'm feeling burnt out. I would love if you could help me. You didn't cause the problem, but I would love if you could help me, or at least let me just sit here and whinge for a minute. And then back to the anxiety. I'm going to accept that I didn't cause the anxiety that's existing in your head. What can I do to help you not feel that? Or do you even just want me to tell you it's not true? I'm not saying everything in the world is your fault and I hate you because you didn't vacuum the floor yesterday. Well, we are half an hour in and we've answered one question.
So I was like, oh, I'm so excited about this. There's so many ideas I got. But then I was like, oh, I can maybe answer or bring to bear the points that popped into my head as you were just finishing your last piece there, Call, with then maybe the next question or any thoughts from either of you, which I'm always excited to hear.
I have the next question ready to go. I always want to know what Nicole has to say. Not
Yeah,
that you
me
have
too.
to.
I never know what the hell I'm going to say until I say
That's why we're so excited and interested.
it.
It's always provocative. Well, and just to sort of shape maybe our segue into the next question, I was thinking about everything that both of you just said, and I'm like, okay, well, what's sort of going on for people, and in that very kind of boots on the ground way that I like to sort of tackle my assessment of things. I'm like, okay, well, we're just like we're inhaling and we're exhaling, and both of those are equal and important parts of a full breath. We're also projecting and reflecting all the time as well. And the more we are aware of what we're projecting and the more we are aware of what we're reflecting back to people around us, the easier it seems to have your awareness stay high and not get caught up and pulled into these ego-driven arguments of perception, right? Because that's where all that value judgment comes from. Like that's where all of a sudden we start keeping score. Well, yeah, you may have struggled harder than me in this situation, but I've struggled much harder than you in these other situations, and I did it 5 times. You've only done it twice this week. Like those kinds of dynamics, right? Which again are at the heart of alienation and divide.
Sorry, could you repeat that? I was too busy struggling.
There you go. Well, I can fix it for you. Or not. Well, and even that concept too, right? Well, to fix something, what does that actually even mean? And I think that that's where it ties into this idea of what we're projecting. We're also reflecting. Oftentimes, we can get caught up in this idea, and I'm speaking about, we as men, or the masculine or the yang side of things, where it's like, well, if I don't fix that problem for you, it's a reflection of me. That's my perception of it, right? So I might be having that issue. I don't want to see that issue mirrored in you because you're going through a thing that's reminding me of what I'm going through. And maybe yours is actually even tougher, more of a struggle and worse. I want to fix that thing, quote unquote, not because I solely and only want to support and help you, but oftentimes the more the ego gets a hold of it, it's about more the fact that, oh, well, I don't want to feel that feeling. I'm already feeling that feeling and I'm scared and struggling with it. You're feeling a similar feeling or trying to tell me that your feeling is as valid as mine. I want to fix yours so I can ignore mine more easily, right? Whereas if you're going through and you're authentically in your place of experience and you're reflecting that back to me, then I kind of have to make the decision to look at my own as well. And a lot of times, people and, men in particular, for lots of, consistent reasons, don't want to do that.
So if we do the spoiler to the end of the show, which is what is the way out of the fight you always have, no matter what the fight is, the spoiler is if you are continuing to have the same fight over and over again and it never gets resolved, one or both of you, and probably both of you, or if it's a fight you're having with yourself, you and you, you are not at the actual thing yet. And the actual thing is the thing that you are scared about. The actual thing is the thing that you, even if it's the body in the backyard, that you are afraid to approach.
Yeah. And usually, especially as you start to see the consistency of that pattern, yeah, the thing you're fighting about or acting like you're fighting about, or actually in some ways even kind of pretending that you're fighting about, is the skeleton in the closet. It's not the body in the backyard. And again, usually the skeleton in the closet is about maybe something you've done, or it's a thing that you might have guilt for, or on actions that you took or didn't take. Whereas the body in the backyard is about shame, and it's about your identity, your core of who you actually are or aren't, in comparison to what you think of yourself, in comparison to what you think other people think of you.
Yeah.
And that's where we get stuck in those loops.
Yeah. Shame is a jerk. Shame is a jerk.
It really is, man.
Yeah.
It's
It's so unnecessary.
it's a doozy. Yeah, because we're not born with it.
That's a good song name.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What's that?
Shame is a jerk.
That's
it
actually
is.
a great song name. Yes, it
Probably
is.
be a country song.
Yes.
In a way.
Yeah, and you're so right, because like,
Can I give my example of how we know we're not born with shame?
sure.
Here's
Yes.
how I know we are not born with shame. I have been there when multiple babies have taken their first breath, and I have seen them in the next 5 to 20 minutes be surprised, be happy, be annoyed, be sad. Hungry is top of the list. They are never ashamed. And one of the ways you can tell is when you take a baby and you change that baby and you put them on the changing table and the cold air hits them as you take the diaper off, and they pee on you and giggle because it feels so good to have cool air and they've got a fountain of pee going. They are not
And the
ashamed,
relief that goes with it.
right? They are amused. They are entertained. They are vastly amused by the fact that you're sputtering, but they are not ashamed because nobody's taught them to be ashamed yet.
Yeah, and one of the things I've had similar experiences with lovely newborn babies, and one of the things that's always struck me about that exact kind of
Babies
example,
usually puke on you.
that's true, um, is that they're super curious and interested in what's happening.
Hmm.
Like they're really just genuinely interested and curious. I'm like, oh, why are you sputtering with this liquid coming out of my body, landing in your face? Like, what's going on? I'm interested in finding out about that. And that's the like the epitome of innocence, which is the total antithesis to shame.
Yeah,
Right? It's not feeling like any part of yourself has to be buried because of the judgment of others.
yeah. So when you're having the same fight and person A is anxious and person two is burned out, if there is no shame about the burnout, if there is no shame about the anxiety, it becomes a different conversation. It goes, hey, I'm feeling anxious. If you can help, that's great. If you can't, that's okay. I'm just going to sit over here and rock for a second. So a lot of the answer to today is also don't don't believe shame. Shame is a jerk and shame lies its face off.
Yeah.
Does. Ugh.
Masterful liar, very sneaky, and very, very, very sophisticated in its machinations. It finds ways to bury itself and hide and keep itself hidden while exerting massively powerful influence over, patterns of behavior.
And if you know what you feel ashamed about, first of all, you have power and capacity over it. But second of all, shame will say, oh, you let yourself be ashamed? That's shameful, right? What's wrong with you? Other people don't do it. Well, no, we allow that because humans are pack animals. And at some point, if we weren't in our community, we probably would have died from starvation or cold or being eaten by whatever random large animals were eating people. So when we agreed to be shamed and that allowed us to stay inside and warm and safe and fed, yeah, no wonder you learned it. That's okay. You just don't have to keep it.
Well, and it goes to the truth of the fact that anything you learn, you can actually unlearn,
Yeah.
right? Because learning takes focus and a certain level of conscious commitment. Well, so does unlearning. And particularly, unlearning is particularly powerful when you also recognize that what unlearning is really relearning or new learning in a lot of ways. So that idea we say in the dojo all the time, right? People come in with an attitude that's either, well, I'm going to be here to win or lose at this thing called jujitsu. And what we hope to inspire them into embracing is the paradigm that allows them to say, well, yeah, I don't have to worry about winning or losing because those are judgments of value that carry the potential for shame, where and instead I can focus on winning or learning. And winning or learning has no shame in it at all because it doesn't deny anything. And really, then in the momentum of winning and learning, really what you're doing is just winning and winning because learning is winning and vice versa. So those dynamics, I think, are at the core of these questions, even though we're still getting to the next one. But the first one's so encompassing. It's got lots of good angles to explore. Um, if I perceive that my anxiety or your burnout is a sign of losing,
Yep.
then I'm going to have a much harder time if I don't know how to handle shame, overcoming my ego's reactions to the prospect that if I admit that I'm anxious, I'm losing. If I admit that you're burnt out, that makes me anxious. So you're losing and therefore I'm losing. And it makes that dwindling spiral of shaming a jerk more and more powerful. Because then everywhere I look, it's just losing or losing.
Yep.
Mm. Yep.
The other part of that is when you get back to the win or learn, if you don't allow yourself to go into agreement with shame, you could admit to feeling it. That doesn't mean you have to agree that that is how you have to feel or that it's telling the truth. Am I allowed to tell the story about your dad and the dinner?
Oh, sure.
So Dana's dad, bless, and I'm very grateful to him for creating Dana, and he or contributing to creating Dana, and he is also very much not Dana. And at one point, I was over there, and his mom was away, so I said, you know what, I'll go over, I'll make dinner. Why don't you come meet me? I'm up in this part of town anyway. Blah blah blah. And his dad, bless, anytime I cooked food, would start with, um, well, you're not as good, your cooking's not as good as mom's cooking. Or my other favorite, good thing you got a day job because you sure can't cook.
Oh
I'm
God.
like, I'm making you food, buddy. And I was still getting triggered by it. And I was playing the game of, okay, if it's win or learn, what do I learn? What do I learn? How can I do this differently? How can I do this differently? And that night I was tired. I wasn't doing it differently. So Dana called and he was like, actually, Cole, I know I'm supposed to come up there, but I don't know. I think you got a gig or something. And you're like, do you want to come down here and meet me? We'll have dinner here. I can play a show. I'd love to have you here. So I said, yeah, sure. I'll be there right away. So his dad wouldn't usually put food on a plate by himself. That was not his job. So I put food on a plate, and as I walked it over to him, he was like, "What is this? Smells terrible." And I hit the end of my rope. So in my win or learn phase, I plunked the plate down and I said, "Just be grateful your son was supposed to be coming for dinner tonight because otherwise I would have put arsenic in it." And I thumped down the stairs, and as I'm halfway down the stairs, I hear arsenic. That was a good one. Hey, Cole, this is good. You can make this again. I'm like, really? I had to threaten you.
Death.
and
That's funny.
and some of it was the win or learn, which is it wasn't the threat, although the threat didn't hurt. I tried it again after that. The win or learn was that man spoke a language best spoken in joking and teasing and poking at.
Yeah.
And so when I poked back, he went, "Oh, phew, I don't have to be ashamed. You understand me." So,
That's a good example of an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, and it's a couple of things that are hilarious about that is that first of all, he came from a generation that where it was even shameful to admit that you felt ashamed of something,
yeah.
right?
That's right.
Right? Just the compounding of that, just incredible. And also that while he would say, "Oh, you don't cook as good as mom cooks," to you,
Yep.
he would also say and compare her cooking to anybody else's and say the same thing,
Yep.
right? So that always fascinated me and befuddled me in some really profound ways until I got to understand more clearly. And we had the great fortune of going last year on a trip to the place in the Caribbean that my dad was born. Unfortunately, it was after he passed away, and we went to spread his ashes. But I learned so much because we'd never been there before. Been to the Caribbean many times. We'd never been to his island. I learned so much about the environment and the enforcement of shame that he grew up in. It made it way easier to understand that behavior that Cole just told in that awesomely hilarious story in a manner that I could actually have some empathy for, as compared to how it used to drive me nuts that he would quote unquote behave that way. So it just sort of spoke to me and taught me the real depth and power, and I can use the word very deliberately, distortion of a personality and a behavior that shame unchecked can have.
Yeah. So, should we answer a second question, or are we just going to have a one
I think we
question?
probably answered them all already in depth and scope of what we talked about. But hey, for fun, before we actually run out of time, which is insane that we're this far through, let's actually specifically ask another question or answer another asked question.
Yeah, because what I was going to say is part of the point of this, as we answered the first question 7,000 times, is that all of those answers pretty much apply everywhere,
Mhm.
right? So if you can get rid of the shame, if you can play with win or learn, if you can understand where the other person is coming from and go with shared experience, like all of these aspects apply to pretty much any question. And now you don't need us anymore, folks. There you go. There are your answers.
And now we're going to take another question to actually prove that.
So yeah, this one. Okay. My adult daughter and I fight every time she visits about how I raised her. Things I did wrong, things I should have known. I carry a lot of guilt, so I absorb it. But I'm starting to feel like the absorbing might be making it worse for both of us.
Mm. Yeah, we're gonna have to do another show on this topic because that opens up a really, I think, fruitful level of assessment and comparison, right? Because
Why everything is mom's fault?
sure, yeah. Um, and it's really interesting because what it points me towards is while we are not born with a natural capacity for shame,
Mm,
I would posit to say that we are born with a natural capacity for guilt, which is actually really potentially, when not saddled and hijacked and distorted by shame, our natural potential to experience guilt is healthy.
mhm. It's often applied in the wrong
It
place.
is because shame hijacks it, right? As shame hijacks our natural capacity for embarrassment as well too,
Hmm.
right? And turns it into something that then has to be taught as a system of control
Hmm.
instead of being something that's allowed to occur as a natural part of our emotional compass and our intuitive check and balance of our own behavior.
I will say probably from, I mean, I work with a lot of women.
Mhm.
Um, so many moms, and especially good moms, will, as this person says, absorb it because they are aware that they were not perfect mothers.
Mm.
So therefore, anything that happened, anything their children are ever upset about that they might have done, quote unquote, wrong, is their fault because they could have done better and they should have done better and they should have known better.
For sure.
So where that gets hijacked is the difference between I could have done better and the awareness that, yeah, current time me who learned all this stuff by doing things in the win or learn and didn't win that time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I didn't I didn't do the thing perfectly, which is different from you should be ashamed, I should be ashamed. It's so terrible that I did. It's so terrible that I wasn't a perfect mom. I had all these plans to be a perfect mom.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to switch it into, yeah, I made some mistakes. You're here, hooray. So that's a win, right? And I'm happy to learn from them. I have such a good example from um a family member growing up, but I don't have their permission to use it, so I'm going to ask and use it next time because it's my favorite. It's so funny.
And we might, I think, perhaps touch this topic again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the challenge is with all that distortion, right? Because I would say that this particular scenario isn't necessarily that this person as a mother is feeling guilt as such,
Mm,
or that the guilt is gaining momentum and becoming more painful every time it's triggered or brought up. It's actually a shame issue more than it is
mm,
a guilt issue,
mm-hmm,
right? Because guilt in its healthiest expression, right? And of course, it gets distorted to be very unhealthy as well too when it's anchored to and fueled by shame. But guilt kind of has a particular function. Guilt is about our actions, about what we do and what we don't do. So that sense of guilt is there to get us to pay attention to and put our focus on what action we took or didn't take, what consequences it had or didn't have. So ultimately, and hopefully in a healthy way, we can do better next time,
mm-hmm,
right? So it's got an acknowledgement of that which might be assessed as negative, but with a purpose towards the value of that assessment being towards doing better in the next instance.
mm-hmm,
Guilt doesn't, sorry, shame has none of that. Shame is just, you're bad. This is bad. You did this because you're bad. The thing you did was bad. And there's nothing good that can come out of you because you're bad.
mm-hmm.
That's it's just like even saying that, I'm feeling the weight of it as I'm saying it in an intellectual and conceptual way. Right. So part of what helps us, I think, recognize shame is the consistency pretty much across the board with which it always feels bad.
Mm-hmm.
Like shame doesn't, anytime shame is entered into the conversation, whether it's in our own heads and in hearts or it's verbalized to us from external source, it always feels bad. always feels bad. Our sense of guilt, our natural capacity for good conscience, and how that mitigates and governs our behavior can feel bad, but temporarily.
Yep.
And it's amazing how that connects to a sense of like responsibility, right? When a person's pointed out that they've done something that isn't productive or is negative to those around them, that natural sense of guilt, if they can accept it, gives them an opportunity to have a clear sense of how to take better responsibility for themselves the next time around. That actually feels good and can feel good and doesn't stay stuck in a momentum of feeling worse and worse and worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. Part of that is because we acknowledge and respect and applaud the certain level of integrity that it takes for someone to actually accept guilt, to accept their feeling of guilt. Hey, I acted in a manner that I realize now wasn't beneficial to you. And maybe I wasn't aware of that before. Maybe I was aware of it and I was so hurt and scared from your actions that I did that in the moment. And now that I'm not in that moment, I'm like, oh, I wish I hadn't done that. But there's always the possibility for liberation from the acceptance of a sense of guilt. Now, the problem is, and again, just from my experience and perspective, is that unfortunately, because shame is like a hot rock, no one wants to hold it.
That's the album right there. Shame is like a hot rock, man. I would listen to that.
With the title track, Shame is a Jerk.
Yep. I would buy that. I would play the heck out of it.
Followed by Whiskey is My Friend.
Yeah. Play the heck out of that.
There you go. I think we've got the project detailed now. Uh, the problem is because shame is like is a thing that like everybody wants to give away shame like Halloween candy, right? They just like they don't want to hold it, they just want to get rid of it as quickly as possible. And in an environment where someone vulnerably and authentically has a sense of guilt or embarrassment, speaks to that, and is willing to take on that sense of guilt or embarrassment in a productive way, because shame is so undesirable, people are always trying to give it away. That's where shame hijacks a moment like that and does the very reverse of what courage is supposed to glean, right? When people are vulnerable and they genuinely have courage to accept that vulnerability and share it, that's an inspiring action and kind of always is. It sort of cuts across all barriers when we see an act of courage, and not like big C, I'm running into a burning building, saving people courage, but like, hey, I'm admitting a weakness here, or I'm sharing a vulnerability here and taking responsibility for my behavior. That kind of courage is generally always very inspiring. The challenge is that because shame is such an enforced and taught behavior, people can see that vulnerability, bypass the courage, ignore it, and take it as an opportunity to enforce shame on the person. Right? What does that sort of look like and feel like? I think that translates into, instead of accepting and acknowledging that a person's reached for their responsibility and has genuinely humbled themselves to that, to be accountable for that thing, we pile on it. Right? Well, that was bad, and you should feel bad for that. Well, I know, but I just said that I did. Yeah, I know, and you're right, because you should feel bad, as opposed to, well, hey, that's pretty courageous that you actually acknowledged that, took on the responsibility of it, have shared and take the initiative to share that you feel bad about that action and you don't want to repeat that action again. But because I guess what I'm trying to describe is part of where shame enters into the situation is because shame is so, and I'm going to use the words very deliberately, terrifying and murderous of an energy.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And again, it's not a natural energy. No child is born with a sense of shame. So where do we get it from, and how did we get it, and how did it become so strong and pervasive in how we choose to try to control each other in society? Is simply because it was taught. And it was taught because it's actually quite forcefully effective short-term tactic.
Yep.
And on that note, one of the antidotes is humor. Let's talk about that next time, because somehow we have used up our entire time.
Again.
Possible.
So next week, Dana will talk about astrology. We will answer 1 or 2 questions. And we may be talking about menopause, and we may be talking about shame, and we may be talking about humor. So, come back and explore it.
I think that sounds great. How many other questions did we have?
30?
Oh, geez.
Oh my
Well,
God.
holy jumping.
26. We had 26.
Well, okay. Part 2.
Yeah, we might.
Part 3, 4, 5.
There you go. Come back and see. Do we answer any of the other 24 questions? Did we talk about humor? Stay tuned, folks.
Yeah, actually,
Before you-
yeah,
Oh,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say before you go, gotta do that shameless self promotion.
Oh, yes. Thank you for the reminder.
Shameless, get it? Ah.
Yeah,
Bada
see, nice.
bada.
Boom. Yes, handsy hands. Nice.
We are remarkably close. Keep checking out the digitaldojo.net. We have been working for about a year on some very cool, believe it or not, wall art with a lot of the concepts that we're talking about, because it is just nice to look at something that makes you happy and reminds you of who you are and what you're capable of. Those are almost ready to go. We're so excited. So keep checking out the digitaldojo.net. And also check out our audios on there and our Black Belt Mind. If you want to learn about more about how Dana thinks, check out the Black Belt Mind. The white belt is free. If you want to do some audios and sleep better, I had 2 lovely people this week say they got through their week because of listening to the nap audios at night, which was amazing. And they said they weren't even listening to the quote unquote right ones. They were having anxiety attacks and they were listening to the chronic pain and the unweighted ones. And they were just like, it put me to sleep. It calmed me down. So there are 3 free 3-night audios. And then for the unweighted one, if you want to buy that one, you can do the 21-night build out. It's exciting. And we'll have new audios up there soon. So come and check us out.
Yes, please check us out at the digitaldojo.net, where you can see and access things immediately on that platform, as well as find the other avenues on the socials medias sphere, where you can get other information that will reflect and is sometimes different than what you'll get on our actual website, thedigitaldojo.net. We're on all the major socials, from Pinterest to YouTube. So if that's more your speed and flavor, and that lands in a way that's easy for you to access, all the links are there and you can check them out anytime, 24/7, 365, and get more information about any of these conversations that you hear on News for the Soul, as well as be reminded that for all News for the Soul listeners, our discount for 2026 for any paid program on the digitaldojo.net is 50% off. So everything to gain, nothing to lose. Come hang out with us. We'd love it.